Welcome to Santorini, and we're committed to staying daily on the podcast. I'm going to be here for a couple more days, so hey, enjoy the beautiful background because we are literally at the top of the mountain here in Santorini for today's podcast. And I want to start by sharing with you what walking through this town reminded me of. One of the most painful conversations I ever had was with an amazing dealer principal that I'd coached for several years. We'd become close enough that I would even say he's my friend, not just my client. And an amazing father, husband, excellent operator. But over dinner one night, he shared this thought, and it broke my heart. He said, Chris, the more successful I get, the worse I seem to feel. It feels like earlier in my career when I had nothing, I was happy. And now, the more I get, the worse I feel. And I'll suggest to you that one of the most important distinctions anybody can ever make is understanding the difference between the science of achievement and the art of fulfillment. I first heard this distinction from Tony Robbins, and here is the way he explained it. He said that the science of achievement is what it takes to build a business, to accumulate wealth, to, absolutely build things that last. But the art of fulfillment is totally different, and it is unique and individual to every single person. And some of the most miserable people in the world are those who spend their whole life understanding, learning, and mastering the science of achievement and completely ignore the art of fulfillment. That's how you become a John Belushi, where you become unbelievably famous, but you end your life in suicide because you never mastered or put enough time into the art of fulfillment exactly the way you did into the science of achievement. I could literally spend 3 days in a workshop just on the art of fulfillment. So I want to dive into one particular area where we tend to let the science of achievement suck all of the joy out of the art of fulfillment. We're going to dive into that today. I'm Chris Hunsicker, and this is the Dealership War Room. Leadership fire, built daily, fueled intentionally, and delivered relentlessly. And today, I'm on location here in Greece to keep my commitment to deliver leadership fire every single day. So let's dive in to that most important distinction that we've been talking about. The problem with problems is not the problem, it's you. I was speaking at a conference and I just delivered a keynote speech, and then I was asked to be on a panel of several of the other speakers who were all answering kind of a Q&A around culture, excellence, and execution. That was the focus of the conference. And towards the end of the Q&A, someone raised their hand and said, Chris, can I ask you a question? I'm like, yeah, please. And he said, you work with businesses all over the world. And so you see different cultures, different approaches. What do you think is the number one problem in business today? And he was serious. It was a thoughtful question, and I wanted to give a thoughtful answer. And so I had to pause. And when you're in a Q&A, to stop for 5 or 10 seconds is a long time, but it deserved a good answer. And this was the answer that I gave him. I said, the number one problem in business is the expectation that there should be no problems. That somehow, someday, you are going to arrive at a place where you've made enough great decisions, you've made enough money, you've done enough things that finally there won't be problems. And that right there is antithetical to really understanding how to have joy and fulfillment. Because whenever you go contrary to nature, when you go contrary to the way things really are, you will always be frustrated, you will always be disappointed, and you will always be sad and angry. And that is what I was trying to share with this gentleman, that there are always going to be problems. And the expectation that somehow you'll arrive at a place where there's no problems is the problem. As a matter of fact, if we want to dive even deeper, Tony Robbins said this in his business mastery program. He said that the whole purpose of business is to solve problems so well, you get new, bigger, better problems. You see, when your problem is, how do I find enough customers? That's a bad problem. When your problem is, my advertising campaign was so awesome, I have more customers than I can handle, that's a much better problem. And the purpose of business is to become so good at solving your problems that you get more problems, but they're better problems. And that's what you're looking at doing. So let me share with you one of the best leadership tools I've ever seen. And this comes from Phil Stutz, the author of The Tools and his most recent book, Lessons for Living. And if you haven't read it, I strongly recommend that you read it. In that, he shares this thought, this tool, and he says basically that as human beings, we are never exonerated from hard work, pain, and uncertainty. Now remember, never means 100%. That we are told, we are lied to by society, we are lied to by marketers, that if you buy this brand, if you achieve this thing, that, and for our kids, you can have the rock star lifestyle, right? That somehow you can make enough money and be famous enough, and you will finally be exempted from hard work, pain, and uncertainty. And that very belief is exactly what drives so many famous people to suicide. It's what steals the joy from people. It's one of the main reasons people cannot master the art of fulfillment, because they are constantly waiting for that day that hard work, pain, and uncertainty goes away. That's exactly where the dealer that I was talking to, my friend, at the very beginning was at. He had the belief that somehow if he worked hard enough, that one day he would be exonerated from pain, hard work, and uncertainty. What I would suggest to you is, Phil Stutz is exactly right. And every religious tradition in the world teaches it. You will never be exonerated from pain, hard work, and uncertainty. If you choose to love someone, the ancient Greeks said it will double your capacity for pain. That's what loving does. One goes with the other. That you will always need to work hard, because that's where joy comes from. And you will always have uncertainty. Think about it. Remember, and I hope that you at some point have seen the movie Groundhog Day. Here's a man that had 100% certainty. Every single day, he knew exactly what was going to happen. And after living that way for a few weeks, if you remember in the movie, he tried to kill himself and he couldn't. And then he had to figure out the art of fulfillment. So your war room challenge for today, two things. Number one, I want you to go back to the art of fulfillment, and I want you to find something in your life that used to bring you joy, peace, connection, fulfillment, that you stopped doing because you got so busy. And I want you to write that down. And now, how can you build that back into your daily life, into your daily routine? So you're starting to spend the same amount of time, energy, and effort on the art of fulfillment that you are on the science of achievement. And then number two is, I want you to write down what you think are your top 10 problems right now. Write down all 10 of them. And if you need 20 or 30, rock and roll, but get down to the top 10. And then I want you to ask yourself this question: how could you solve those problems so that you end up solving a bigger problem? In other words, I want you to shift your mindset from I shouldn't have these problems to how can these problems serve me? How will these problems move me forward? How will the solutions drive me to the very goals that I'm looking for? So let's finish with this thought. Since I'm in Greece, let's go back to Socrates. And he said, the obstacle that you see in front of you is the way to the path and the goals and the dreams that you have. That's where Ryan Holiday got the idea to write the book, The Obstacle is the Way. I would suggest to you that not only is the idea that I should have no problems destroying the art of fulfillment in your life, but it's the act opposite in terms of, I got to redo that. So let me finish with this thought. Since we're in Greece, let's quote Socrates, who said that the obstacle in front of you is the way to your goal or your dream. That's where Ryan Holiday created the title, The Obstacle is the Way, because the very problems that are in front of you, the obstacles, are the way to everything that you're looking for, all the things that you desire and all the things that you want. So with that, please follow through on this assignment. I promise you it's going to help you out, and I will see you tomorrow in the Dealership War Room.